All right, everybody. Thursday, May 2nd. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the Black and Gold Breakdown. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. Yesterday on the show, before we got out of here, I said that the plan for today was going to be all right, we'll talk a little bit about Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, as well as the cornerbacks. That was going to be the plan for today. We're going to push that to tomorrow for obvious reasons. And if you're watching this, you know why. The Steelers decline to pick up Najee Harris's fifth-year option, which means that if they don't come to some sort of deal or extension before next March, he will be a free agent. And, talking about it yesterday, because we had a lengthy conversation on here about Najee Harris yesterday. One of you had asked if I thought that the Steelers would be picking it up. And I said, yeah, I think that, going into it just made sense. It would have made him the 12th highest paid running back in football if they had picked it up, which is fine. I think that's worthy. I think that is, right around where he is in the NFL, is right around the 12th best running back in football. So the Steelers declining to pick up his option, it was surprising. You look at the numbers that he's put up and numbers that you've already heard. He's run for 1,000 yards in each of his first 3 seasons, the first Steeler to do it, all that jazz. And so, it was surprising that they decided to just not pick it up. But at the same time, if we're looking at this big picture wise, it also tells us that the Steelers believe more in Jaylen Warren as a long-term answer at running back. And if that's the case, they were never going to pay 2 running backs. It makes no sense to do that in today's NFL. And so this tells me that Pittsburgh, knowing that they weren't going to pay both of them, are more than okay with keeping Jaylen Warren over Naji Harris when it comes down to it. Now, personally, I think that Jaylen Warren is the better back. So it makes sense to me in that regard, where they can look at Harris's production per attempt, per certain amount of carries, compared to Jaylen Warren's. I mean, Jaylen Warren's just more productive per touch. That's just factual. My editor at USA Today, one of the best minds in football, Doug Farrar, we were talking about this ahead of last season. I remember a conversation that he and I had just around preseason time. So, about, 11 or, 9, 10 months ago, right before the season started last year. We were talking about the Steelers running backs and whatnot. And the thing that he said about Najee Harris was that if you need 3 yards, Najee Harris will get you 3 yards. If you need 5 yards, Najee Harris will get you 3 yards. So I think that in some way, maybe the Steelers feel the same way. Because again, when talking about his, overall production, yes, just raw numbers, 1,000 yards in 3 seasons is great, but he's only averaged over 4 yards a carry once, and that was this past season. The comparison that I make is, if a receiver, goes for 1,000 yards, that's pretty raw number says that's pretty good. But if you look at his receptions and it's just like 115 tunnel screens that all only gain 8 yards, it's not really all that impressive, So my thing with Harris is that I think he's a good back. I'm surprised they didn't pick up the option, but his production is incredibly replaceable. I like Najee Harris, as I'm sure that most of you, if you're a Steelers fan watching this, it's easy to like Najee Harris. He's, always been a positive dude. Stays healthy. I think that's the biggest thing going for him is that he's always on the field. Those are good attributes to have, but raw numbers or numbers per carry, I mean, they tell a story, and it's a story of a guy whose whose value is, replaceable. In 51 career games, he's amassed 100 yards 6 times. And he's averaging 64 yards per game for his career. He didn't have a run over 25 yards last year. So there's no home run aspect to his game. And he's not giving you a ton of yardage. Like 64 yards, you can find that somewhere. And by the way, should he walk away next season, that just means that Jaylen Warren becomes the number 1 and you have to find a new number 2. You can find a number 2 running back. So, yes, I like Najee Harris. Yes, I'm surprised that they did not pick up the option. No, it's not the end of the world because the production that he's put on the field can be replaced. I know there's a lot of people, a couple of people in here. Worthy, good to see you. Should have drafted Blake Corum. Nah, I mean, again, there's no reason. They picked up a guy in undrafted free agency. I'm not worried about that. Concepts, good to see you. Jalen's not a 1, though. I disagree. I think when he gets the opportunity to be the number 1, he's going to shine. I just wrote a piece about this literally an hour ago. I went live. If you look at the biggest thing that people complain about, or I guess, when it comes to Naji Harris, is like, oh, he plays behind a really bad offensive line. Jaylen Warren played behind that same offensive line and averaged 5.3 yards a carry. So at some point, I'm pushing back on that narrative because, the offensive line was bad. Jaylen Warren figured it out. And also, Jaylen Warren gives them much more as a receiver. I think he had 61 catches for 370 yards this past year. So what Jaylen Warren does on a per carry basis is much more than what Harris does. And of course, I'm going to listen to the argument of, them being, different styles of backs and everything like that. But, look at big runs of 20 or more yards. Najee Harris had 8 this past year. It was good. It was good for 4th in the league. Jaylen Warren had 6 on a good amount of fewer carries. So there's just more explosiveness. There's a home run aspect with Jaylen Warren. Like Jaylen Warren's a legit guy who can take it, 74 yards to the house. Najee Harris has never had a carry more than 40 yards. His career high in terms of yardage for a carry is 37 yards. So, again, I like Najee Harris. I'm surprised they didn't pick up the option, but the production is replaceable on a per carry basis. Yes, he had 1,000 yards in 3 straight seasons in a 17-game season. It's not all that difficult to get there. If you can get 54 yards a game, you can get 1,000 yards. I think that's the number. Let me do quick math real quick just to make sure I'm not talking out my ass. 1,000 divided by 17. 58.8. So about 59 yards a game. If you do that for 17 games, you'll be a 1,000-yard rusher. That's not all that impressive to me. And he's only had 100-yard games 6 times. Doesn't hit a lot of home runs. Like I said, I like Najee Harris. Them not picking up his option is not the end of the world, man. Not the end of the world. And again, it does show that they value Jaylen Warren more long-term. And they weren't going to pay both of them. So this to me just says, hey, we think that Jaylen Warren can be a better answer for us long-term. So we're not going to pay Najee Harris. We'll tag him next year if we have to, or if we can come to, an extension where it's, 2 years for, $11.5 million, which would pay him about $5.5 million to $6 million a year. Then maybe they do that. But they weren't going to pay both of them. You're not going to pay more than one running back. Doesn't make sense. So this tells me that they value Jaylen Warren more in the long term. They see the production that he has in both the run and pass games. And, Najee Harris just doesn't have that. Which, again, doesn't mean that he's a bad running back. He's not a bad running back. And I would have picked up the 5th-year option because it would have only made him the 12th highest paid running back in the NFL. So, like, that's fair value for him. I think that's probably right around what he is, but they didn't pick it up. And I know some fans are upset about that, but it's not the end of the world. His value is replaceable. It's just what it is, man. Okay. Concepts has a lot of opinions that he wants to get across here. Hold on. Makes no sense to not pick up the 5th. Like I said, I would have picked it up. I would have picked it up. Tape disagrees. They use Najee differently. Tape shows can't. No, it doesn't. I simply disagree. Jaylen Warren figured it out. Naji Harris, like, especially in 2021, 2022, there's a lot of dancing behind the line of scrimmage, trying to be nimble rather than just running. Like, a lot of the stuff was on Najee himself. Najee is a way better. That's also just not true, man. Like, a lot of those numbers his rookie year came from one game against the Raiders where he caught 14 passes, like 14 really short passes that, you know, Najee's not a better receiver than Jaylen Warren. Sorry. Najee's slow. That's another thing. Yeah, Najee's not fast. So I'm not worried about it. I guess that's my point, is I'm not hurt about it one way or the other. If they would have picked it up, I'd have been like, all right, cool. I probably would have picked it up. But the fact that they didn't, it surprised me. I thought that they would, but I'm not worried about it. Because again, a few things will happen. Either A, they'll just come to some sort of extension with him. That's fine. That'll probably be for like 2 years, $12 million with an out after the first year, or a 3-year deal with an out after the second year, something of that nature. 2, they'll just tag him next year. I don't know what his franchise tag would go for. I don't know the number of that. But tagging him is an option. Or 3, they let him go. Jaylen Warren becomes the one. And again, pay attention to Daijun Edwards this preseason, because if he's good and Najee Harris does walk, well, that's a guy who could be your running back too next year. I saw Mark Kabolia tweeted out like just a list of bad running backs who happened to play for the Steelers at one point. They're all like 4th-string guys. Like, you put like Wendell Smallwood, what was it, Anthony McFarland, Benny Snell, guys like that. Like, who? Willie Parker went undrafted and was the team's franchise back for a while. And Rashard Mendenhall was taken in the 1st round and wasn't good. He had one good year. Like, people are freaking out about running backs way too much. Way too much, man. Way too much. 76 or 500 is better than Jaylen's 71 for 300. 61 for 300 for 3. I put it in the article. I might as well look for it. I'll bring up the exact numbers just to be precise. Because, you know, if we're gonna have the conversation about it, might as well have the raw numbers. I hate when it does that, when it makes me click something I don't want to click. So the numbers for 61 for 370 for Jaylen Warren. So that probably comes out to roughly the same. If it's 76 for 500, you know what? Fine, let's just do the math. Well, I'm already up here. 500 divided by 76. It's about 6.5 yards per catch. And then 370 on 61. It's about 6 yards per catch. Yeah, it's about the same. Nothing crazy. But then how is Warren a better pass catcher? When they forced him the ball 14 times against the Raiders, that definitely inflated his numbers. Just because he didn't get more catches, like running back catches are a lot of the times are just a matter of circumstance. Like if X receiver has more catches than Y receiver, that doesn't mean he's a better receiver. Like, what he does with his touches tells me all I need to know. Like Jaylen Warren, like I said, I'm very much team like Jaylen Warren's the better running back. So this doesn't bother me. I don't think Kyren Williams is that good. He has a good. Kyren Williams is an all-pro, man. Like, I like Kyren Williams. Again, we talked about running backs before. Like, they just kind of pop off sometimes. Look at the best teams in the league that have good running games. It's not one guy. It's a committee. Look at what the Eagles have done the past few years. When they went to the Super Bowl, Miles Sanders was their leading back. He had a really good season, and then he signed with the Panthers and fell off the face of the earth. And then they brought in DeAndre Swift that year, and he did the exact same thing Miles Sanders did. DeAndre Swift just signed with the Bears. My guess, probably not going to be as good. The Ravens, they didn't have a superstar running back before signing Derrick Henry. This is the first time they've had like a really big name guy since Lamar's been there. There's been a lot of Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Justice Hill. They had Devontae Freeman in there for a minute, Le'Veon Bell for a minute. Like none of the Mark Ingram for a minute. Like there was a committee. And everybody is like sending me like these graphics with like Najee Harris, like where he compares to other really good running backs. And my thing is this. What's Jonathan Taylor won? What if the Colts won with Jonathan Taylor? Nothing. What did the Raiders win with Josh Jacobs? Nothing. What did the Giants win with Saquon Barkley? Nothing. What did the Browns won with Nick Chubb? Nothing. What did the Chargers win with Austin Eckler? Nothing. Having a good running back, like, largely not important. You know? Having an elite, like, running back that leads the NFL in rushing yards hasn't equated to winning. Unless you're a Christian McCaffrey who goes from a bad team to a team that's already really good and becomes, even more is like an added weapon to the offense. That's what running backs need to be in today's league, man. You can't, I touched about this yesterday. You can't, as a running back, it's not their fault, but when bad teams take you in the first round, in the top 10, and expect you to like turn their franchise around, they can't do that. A running back is not changing the course of your franchise in 2024. It's not 1990. Okay, this is a completely different game. And people talk way too much about running backs. And like, I get their pain and I get where they're coming from because they are good enough to get their money, but they go to bad situations. And it's not their fault. But you got a guy like Saquon Barkley who gets drafted second overall to a Giants team who didn't have a long-term answer at quarterback, whose offensive line was bad. Like overall, the team was really, really bad. Taking a running back second overall was dumb. And they felt the impact of that ever since. They didn't win anything with Saquon Barkley. And I was going to go to Philadelphia, similar to how Christian McCaffrey went to the 49ers, a team that was already really good. And now he can be an added element that makes them that much better. So, like having an elite running back, man, it's not essential for winning. I see a few people had said Isaiah Pacheco. I like Isaiah Pacheco, but he's not in the same conversation of a Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. He's good. I think he's right around that same conversation as Naji Harris. And personally, I would take Isaiah Pacheco over Naji Harris. Like, Pacheco's good, but he's not in that. And even then, even if he was elite, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. Like, we know the deal with the Chiefs. They didn't have a legitimate number one receiver last year, and they still won the Super Bowl. Really, the last 2 years, they haven't had one. They won the Super Bowl. So, like, having an elite running back doesn't lead to winning per se. At least not recently across the league. That's just what it is. Again, that's why I'm not worried about it. You got Jaylen Warren. He's a good running back. But until you get the quarterback right, doesn't mean shit. We're just being realistic right now. Unless Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields are good next year, this is all for naught. And that's what it comes down to, unfortunately. Ravens technically have a $60 million paid running back. Who the hell? If it's Derrick Henry, this is the first time they've paid one. I don't know who the hell they pay $60 million to. Unless that was like their entire combined running back room. Do we agree that Najee is No, he's not elite. He's good. He's good. He ain't elite. Again, he's not in the conversation of Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey or those upper echelon guys. Nick Chubb. I'm not putting him in that same breath. I think he's good, but he's not in that echelon of guys. And if he does go somewhere else next year, I hope it is to a team that's already good so he can just be another piece and help them win. I want good things for Naji Harris. I like him. I'm surprised that they didn't pick up the option, but again, I'm not, saying the sky is falling because they didn't pick up Najee Harris's fifth-year option. Okay, concepts, and now you're just trying to mince my words. I was just speaking in general about elite running backs. Just speaking in general. No, he's a good running back. I wouldn't put him in the elite class. So I understand that people have their strong Najee Harris opinions. I don't. Oh, okay. Sorry. Lamar. Okay, I get the joke now. Yeah. Again, I understand that people have their Najee opinions. I totally get it. I like Najee Harris. Some like him more than I do. I mean, X Concepts and seems to definitely like him more than I do. It's just I'm not worried about what that means, Justin Fields option running back. I hope not. No. By the way, the talks of Justin Fields returning kicks, don't worry about that. Jaylen Warren was very much kidding about that. That's not going to happen. No, Justin Fields, they aren't going to do anything stupid with him because they're hoping that he can be their franchise guy. They're not going to put him in harm's way intentionally. So I understand that, like I said, Najee Harris is a good back, but 64 yards a game is replaceable. That's the point I'm making. There's not an explosive element to his game. This is what it is. Jaylen Warren is not in the class of elite backs, so why is he worth making number one and not keeping Najee? Jaylen not in his league. I think Jaylen Warren's the better back than Najee Harris personally, and he's cheaper. Like that, you don't got to worry about. I think that Jaylen Warren will go for less money than Najee Harris will, purely off of, Najee Harris can point to these raw numbers that we keep coming back to and probably get a little bit more money than Jaylen Warren would. Like I said, I'm very much on the side of things that Jaylen Warren is just the better running back. So I'm fine with him being the guy next year. What's Jaylen Warren's contract up? I don't think it's next year. I think it's after next year, is it not? Because they signed him as an undrafted free agent. So let's see. Hold on. Let me go to Spotrac. His contract is up. He'll be a restricted free agent next year. So they'll have like all the rights to him if anybody tries to, if somebody makes him like an offer, the Steelers have a right to match or something of that nature. Yeah. And by the way, he's going to be the cheaper option. They can bring him back. Again, Jaylen Warren's a big reason why I'm not worried about them trying to find somebody else to be the number two should he be the starter. He was an undrafted free agent. Willie Parker was an undrafted free agent. Austin Eckler was an undrafted free agent. Like, Nick Chubb wasn't a first-round pick. Alvin Kamara was a fourth-round pick. Like, there's a reason that people, say running backs are a dime a dozen because they largely are anymore in today's NFL. And as long as you have, an average one, you're chilling, man. You're chilling. I love the dual backfield, though. I was hoping to be sure to have Najee and Warren the next 2 years. I mean, I like the dual backfield too. I do too. We'll have it this year. And it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if they do some sort of extension. But yeah, that's another big part of this. Just because they didn't pick up the option, that doesn't mean that Najee Harris is 100% gone next year. Jaylen Warren also needing paid, that's where the wrench gets thrown in. And again, I don't think they're going to pay both. That's just my opinion. It's not to say that they won't figure something out, but if I had to guess, they're going to keep Jaylen Warren and they're going to let Najee Harris walk. Where would he go? I don't know. I mean, that's way too far ahead to look at it. We have an entire season between now and then. So we'll see. But my guess is they value Jaylen Warren more long term. He's going to be the cheaper option. So I'm not worried. That's a good shout, Jonathan. Dallas, a possible destination for Najee? Yeah. I mean, their running backs right now, they just brought back Ezekiel Elliott. They have what? Ezekiel Elliott and Deuce Vaughn. By the way, I like Deuce Vaughn. He was a very fun player to watch. I want to say he was at the Senior Bowl last year when I was there. I think he was one of the guys there. So I like Deuce Vaughn. He's fun to watch in the preseason last year when he got in games in the regular season. So, yeah, well, we'll see. Outside of Najee, who they drafted the last 10 years that's been good at running back. Yeah, I mean, valid point. Yeah, they took McFarland, who never really found his footing. He was like a preseason hero, Anthony McFarland. Jonathan Dwyer was there for a minute. He was their starter for a minute. He had a few splash games, but nothing long term. Benny Snell had that one really good game against the Giants week 1, 2020. Remember that? I think he had a 100-yard game that day. They're not trying to give out that guaranteed money. Yeah, no, like business-wise, it makes sense because you're not going to give, big money to a guy when you're also trying to keep somebody else at his position around. So I think that they very much value Jaylen Warren more long-term, and he's going to be a restricted free agent next year. Jaylen Warren's sticking around. He ain't going anywhere. They're making sure that he's there. Now, if they're able to get Najee Harris at a price that they like for, a 2-year extension, cool. Or even if it's just a 1-year extension, maybe they tag him. I don't know. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's gone, but it does mean, at least in my eyes, that they value Jaylen Warren more long-term. And they think that he is, the guy for the future. Najee doesn't fumble, and Jaylen is not a closer and won't wear down the defense. Look, man, you can find a guy that eats 3-yard gains all day. I'll take the guy that's a home run threat and can take it 74 yards to the house. You can find a big dude who will wear down the defense. I'll take the guy who's a threat to get big yardage. I thought they would pick it up, but I guess they're telling him it's a prove it year. I think that's kind of part of it too, maybe. I think they want to see what he looks like in the new offense. I think he's going to do well. But again, I'm not too worried about it. Watch out for the rookie undrafted. Yeah, I mean, especially in preseason, like pay attention to Jaylen Edwards a lot now. Because we know how the preseason's going to go, where it's like late third throughout the entire fourth quarter, they're going to pass it maybe 3 times in that span. We're going to see a lot of Jaylen Edwards this summer. So we're going to have at least, some sort of idea of what he looks like on the field and in action. And if he looks promising, then okay. Now, take it with a pinch of salt a little bit too, because remember, Anthony McFarland's had some nice preseason games as well, and now he's in the UFL. By the way, there's if you were like a Steelers fan and are watching the UFL, you're going to hear some names that are like, oh my God, that guy's there. That's crazy. I think Sammy Coates was it Sammy Coates? There was a receiver who I think plays for the Brahmas that was a Steeler, whose name is escaping me. I don't think Sammy Coates was in the XFL a few years ago. That's going to bug me. I'm going to have to look up the UFL roster. But McFarland's on one of them. Brad Wing, the punter, I think him and McFarland are on the same UFL team. So that's fun. Had to respectfully disagree on Najee's usage not being different than Warren's. It was just so predictable every rush. And that's fine. And we can respectfully disagree. That's what, makes this stuff so good. We're not always going to agree on everything. We can do it civilly. That's good, though. Like I said, if I had to pick one to have on, my team going forward, if I, blind draft, just who do I think is better? I think Jaylen Warren's better. Then remember, last year, this has been a debate for a minute. Going into last year, there's people like, we should see what Jaylen Warren has, And that hasn't slowed down because he's been very good. Sammy Coates or Martavis, I wonder where Damon Patterson went. I loved him in camp and preseason a few years back. I don't think it was Martavis. I think Martavis was on Martavis like last season like in the middle of last year, got a like tryout with the Cowboys or something of that nature. And I think he was on their practice squad, but then they cut him. I can't. It wasn't. It's gonna really bug me. Who the hell was it? Oh, it's really gonna bother me. Eli Rogers might be in one of these leagues too. You're gonna start streaming every night. So yeah, throughout the rest of the off season, we'll do it every Monday through Friday night. Do it around this time. So Monday through Friday night, 7:30-ish. We'll go for about an hour. As I said last night, though, once the regular season comes in, it's going to be a little bit difficult. I envision it'll be a little bit difficult for me to do that. But we'll still have at least 2 streams a week. I'll say probably 3. So like one right after the game. Maybe not right after, like the day after the game. And then we'll do one like middle of the week and then one game preview, something of that nature. Obviously, we have a little bit of time to worry about it. But throughout the rest of the off season, Monday through Friday, 7:30 is what we'll do. So, because again, y'all tune in. So I mean, as long as you guys keep tuning in, I'll be here. Especially, you know, in the dead of May when we all just are craving football. If this becomes the forum to do that, then absolutely I'll keep doing it every weeknight, 7:30. Tune in. And while I'm talking about the content, you can also watch my my podcast, The Pump Fake, on this channel, which is my national NFL pod. Tomorrow, I might do it tomorrow. We'll see. But if it's not already out right now, it will be tomorrow morning. My top 36 quarterbacks in the NFL. That'll be coming out on USA Today. I'll give you a little bit of a peek, though, because that's just the kind of guy I am. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are back-to-back in the list. And I want to say, what number did I put them at? I might have forgotten the number, though. I think I put them at 22 and 21, with Fields at 21 and Russ at 22. I think that's where I put them. It's either 22 and 21 or 23 and 22, one of those two. So that's a little peek for you. You can go read that on USA Today. Again, I don't think it's out right now. I think we scheduled it for tomorrow morning. That way, you know, it's bright and early for people to read. I'll check, though, real quick and see if it's out, just to be certain. Drum roll, please. Nope, not out. So it'll probably come out tomorrow morning. Probably tomorrow morning. And then, but yeah, watch my podcast, The Pump Fake, or listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Me and JP Acosta just did an episode a couple days ago. So if I don't talk about the quarterback list tomorrow, I'll do it later on. NFL, like I said, NFL schedule release is predicted to be next Thursday, the 9th. So whenever that does happen, I'm going to have a lot of fun on this show with it, a lot of fun on the Pump Fake with it. So that's going to be a big content piece as well. Do you think the change in the offense and OC impacted their decision on the 5th year? That's a good point. Yeah, I don't think that that's too far off. But again, I mean, like I said, credit to Najee. I mean, the offense wasn't great, and he put up good raw numbers. But, you know, the yin and yang with that is that, you know, Jaylen Warren put up better yards per carry, better numbers per carry. And if they can get him for cheaper in a year where they would have to pay both of them, I think that they're going to prioritize Jaylen Warren to get that done because they can do it for a little bit cheaper. And then, you know, if they can get Najee Harris back, I'm sure they'd like to, but they're prioritizing Jaylen Warren. You're making money from this, just curious. Not that it matters, but it is a career for you to talk about football. My full-time gig is writing about football, which I'm very grateful for. Great people at SB Nation, USA Today, as well as A to Z Sports, who all pay me to talk about this great game. In terms of the YouTube stuff, I just started really doing this, like paying attention to YouTube over the past year. Didn't really figure out how to get like good views on it and whatnot until like a couple months ago. And even then, I'm still not getting like crazy views, but like with the live streams, they do numbers. So you're allowed to give me super chats now, which is neat. And if you become a Pump Fake Plus member, it's $2.99 a month for the extra content. So in terms of the YouTube stuff, I'm not making anything off YouTube right now. Doing all this is an attempt to keep growing the following and growing the memberships and subscriptions to eventually make some money from YouTube. But yeah, the full-time gig is writing about football, which is pretty dope. Pretty happy about it. Warren is not a feature back. Definitely not a note of bell cow or workhorse. Yeah, I can't tell if that was an appraisal for Jaylen Warren, but I'm going to take it as one because I love Jaylen Warren. I think he's great. He's great. Took a coffee break there for a minute. But yeah, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you, again, Steelers show, Black and Gold Breakdown, where we talk everything Steelers throughout the rest of the offseason, Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. We'll do this for about an hour. So if you're not already subscribed, please do so. And I did do a write-up on Behind the Steel Curtain for SB Nation, where I'm the deputy editor of all things Steelers over there. Just giving my thoughts on the Najee Harris situation. If you've been in here for a minute, you've heard my thoughts, but if you want to read the more in-depth numbers on this, then absolutely you can. Hold on, I saw somebody say something. Fields is a running back and kick returner now. Yeah, if you guys saw the podcast with Cam Hayward, he did a live episode of his podcast at Acrisure where he had Jaylen Warren there and he brought a few of the rookies over. Jaylen Warren had joked about like, oh, maybe we'll use Justin Fields as a kick returner because he said that Danny Smith had joked about it, who's their special teams coordinator. They're not going to do that. It was very much just Jaylen joking around. That's not going to happen. Everything's all good. Not a big fan of Warren. Definitely no hate. Just a bigger fan of Najee and his production, but Warren is a beast. Yeah, no, I like Jaylen Warren a lot. I like Najee Harris a lot too, though. I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle. I know that I've been kind of a contrarian when it comes to this type of stuff, but I like Najee Harris. I don't know if he likes me, but I like Najee Harris, and I would love to see him stick around. It's just a matter, this just becomes, football's a game, the NFL's a business. And, if they can keep one or the other, they're going to keep Jaylen Warren. And if they can figure out a way to keep Najee Harris there as well, they would be very happy with that. But if they can find a way to like pay them both like equal money, I think that they would be okay with that. Again, just comes down to money. Great thing is we don't have to choose. We have both, and combined, I think they are equal to an elite back, just cheaper. I don't think Najee gets enough credit for not missing a game. But there aren't many. Yeah, no. His biggest factor, like the biggest thing he's got going for him is that he's always there. He hasn't missed a game in his career, and that's pretty commendable. And, the duo that they have, you can make the argument it's the best running back duo in football. So, obviously, love both of them. Very happy that they're, that's another thing. We still get at least one more season of both of them. We'll see if it ends up being more than that. But for, right now, we're going to see how this offense looks with both of them. Now, imagine this. Like, imagine they both go off. Like, imagine Najee has, 11, 1,200 yards. Warren has another year where he has, 7, somewhere in that. Oh, well. It would blow my mind if they had like 2,000-yard backs. I think the last team to do that was the Giants when Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs both ran for 1,000 yards. It's not easy to do. But if they both have nice years, Najee will have a case to be like, okay, this is how much I want paid. If you're not going to pay it, I get it, but somebody else will. And he'll get his money one way or the other, which is good for him. I'm very pro player. So if he can get his money, he's going to get it from somebody. We'll just have to see who it ends up being. Let's see. FT players that can. Yeah, no, there's not a lot of players who can say that, they haven't missed a game in 3 years. It's impressive. It's a shame that most have to bash one to support the other. And that's the thing, when talking about, Jaylen Warren and everything, it's unintended, but I can see why people would think it would come across as me bashing Najee. When pointing out the numbers and stuff. It's not an attempt to like tear him down. It's just pointing out the factual stuff. And again, not trying to bash him. I like Najee Harris, but, just got to give my perspective on it, As fans, it's always one or the other. Yeah, it is. We'll get DK June 1st. Watch. Not going to rule it out. Would be crazy. People got mad about the thing I said, by the way, because I said it on Twitter too, about like worried about the fact that he takes cheap shots at dudes who like lock him down, or if they're losing and he's not getting the ball, he'll just like go off. It worries me. I think that's a fair thing to be worried about. By the way, Cam Taylor-Britt of the Bengals locked him down last year. Guess who was pissed off? DK Metcalf. So he'll see him twice if he does come over. So we'll see. Hi, Carl. I don't like this move. I understand why people don't like it. I do. I'm indifferent about it. I would have, if they would have picked up the option, I would have been like, all right, that's fine. Cool. I'm surprised that they didn't. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily worried about it. You know, they have Jaylen Warren in house who they're going to keep. The worst case scenario here is that you have to find a new running back 2 behind Jaylen Warren. That's the absolute worst case scenario. So that's why I'm not worried, because I think that Jaylen Warren's a little bit better anyway. I would like for both of them to stick around if it's doable, but worst case scenario, you have one of them, which is good. Thought so for a few days. When you add everything said by various sources seems to add up to DK. Yeah, and like I said, my buddy Benjamin Albright was talking about the teams that they have reached out to, said that there was a few other teams that they've called around to. So if it ends up being DK, then I mean, DK and George Pickens both excites me and horrifies me. So it's a team that's going to need very good leadership. And, Russell Wilson has that. Cam Hayward has that. TJ Watt has that. Minka Fitzpatrick has that. So, I mean, they've got the veteran presence in the locker room. That makes me feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, DK Metcalf constantly losing his cool during games, that worries me. And I like George Pickens, but I mean, we've already seen his diva-like tendencies over last season. So there's guys that I would prefer over DK personally. All right, hold on, let's see. Bad line, worse offense, defense new when Najee was in, more likely to run. Warren comes in, not sure, run or pass. They should have the same questions when Najee comes in. He can catch too. I think X Concepts is trying to kind of make that same point. And again, let's say that Najee does go elsewhere and has, a nice year. I'm going to be happy for him, for sure. And we're going to see what he looks like in the new offense. I think that both of them are going to do very well. And he can bring that to the negotiating table and say, look, man, you wanted to see what I looked like in this offense. I did really well. I want to stay here, but, there is a price that you'll have to pay to keep me here. And by the way, that's very fair. Very fair. Very, very pro player, very get as much money as you can. And if I had to guess, like, I'd like to think that they keep both of them around. But again, they're going to have to pay up. Especially if, Najee Harris goes off. Don't trust Warren as the feature back. I'm afraid of another Connor situation where he filmed. That's a decent comp, I would say. I was never the biggest James Conner guy. I wasn't like a hater of James Conner, but like I wasn't upset when he left. Just never a big James Conner guy. That's a good comp though. Like the thing with Conner though was that he had an entire year where he was the feature back and was really good. I think it was like the year after where we started to see, okay, he's not as good as many thought. And then he went to Arizona and just started getting a ton of touchdowns. Didn't put up like great like yardage numbers per se, but like anytime they were inside the 5, you knew Connor was getting it. Dallas thought the same thing about Elliott and Pollard, like how that turned out. To be fair, I mean, Elliott, I've never been a big Zeke Elliott guy. Tony Pollard I like, but he also got hurt. When you have a running back that gets an injury, especially any sort of leg injury, that's just a big red flag. But we'll see how Tony Pollard does in Tennessee with Tyjae Spears. Went from top 3-5 run game with Bell, 32nd overall ranked run game with Connor. Now I'm curious to see what James Conner's numbers were with Pittsburgh. Because there was a year where he did really well. James Conner. He was a Pro Bowler one year with the Steelers, if I'm not mistaken. 2018, 973 yards, 4.5 yards a carry, 12 touchdowns in 2018. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler, actually. My bad. Once with the Steelers, once with the Cardinals. So 2018, he was a Pro Bowler. And then 2019, he missed 6 games. Only had, I can't do math in my head that quick. It doesn't give me an average. Oh, yes, it does. Does it? The point being that in 2019, he was not very good. In 2020, wasn't very good. He was fine, but nothing crazy. And he also missed time in 2020. And then he goes to Arizona, became a Pro Bowler that year. Good for James Conner. Steelers used to reward guys who show up and work hard. Najee hasn't missed a game. I mean, that's cool, man. And by the way, like I said, wouldn't be angry if they did find an extension for Najee, but it shouldn't be based off of just the fact that he's always there. You know, there's lots of guys who are always there. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily great. I do think Najee is good, and like I said, I would like there to be a way that they keep both of them. Warren is the better overall back, and the Steelers can get a good backup next year in the 3rd or 4th round next year. That's kind of my thought process on it, too. That's, again, why I'm not very worried, because I think that they'll be able to find somebody to, be the number 2 behind Jaylen Warren. So, like I said to kick off the show, and I'll get to all the comments in a minute, but let me just reiterate my overall stance on it, since we have more people in here than there was at the beginning of the show. So I promise we'll get to all of what you guys are saying. I'll just give me a few minutes to say my piece, and we'll get to you. 3 things. I like Naji Harris. I'm surprised they didn't pick up the option. I'm not worried about it. In 51 career games, he's only had 100 yards rushing 6 times. Last year, he didn't have a rush of more than 25 yards. In his career, he doesn't have a rush of more than 40 yards. And in 51 career games, he's averaging 64 yards on the ground. And I hear the arguments of, well, he's had 3 straight years of 1,000 yards. No other Steelers running back has done that to start a career. I hear all that. Absolutely. I push back a little bit, especially in today's game, where in a 17-game season, you have to average less than 60 yards a game to get 1,000 yards. That'd be similar to, if a receiver had 1,000 yards receiving, but then you look and say, oh, it was 115 screen passes that went for 7 yards apiece. That's not really all that impressive. And I had a conversation with my editor at USA Today, Doug Farrar, one of the best minds in football. I love Doug to death. We were talking about the Steelers running backs. It was ahead of last season. So it was around like last preseason. And he said, with Najee Harris, if you need 3 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. If you need 5 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. And I think that's kind of my same thought process on Najee. And look, it's great to have a guy that, I think somebody pointed out, who can, wear down the defense, or however you want to put that. But even those types of running backs who wear down defenses or whatever, at least have that next gear to him. Like Derrick Henry is the ultimate wear down defense guy, but he's also one of the best home run hitters in the league when healthy. Najee Harris doesn't have that gear to him, So that's my piece on it, I suppose. And when you look at their per carry numbers side by side, Najee Harris, last year's the first time he averaged more than 4 yards a carry. And I hear the argument about the bad offensive line. Jaylen Warren ran behind the same offensive line. He averaged over 5 yards a carry last year. Now, Najee Harris did have 8 runs of 20 yards or more. I think that was 4th in the NFL, so that's good. In terms of per carry, he averaged about 1 big run per 32 carries. So that's, Jaylen Warren averaged 1 big run per 25 carries. So I think just overall, from a running back perspective, from a pass catching perspective as well, because Jaylen Warren added 61 catches out of the backfield last year. I think that right now the Steelers value Jaylen Warren more. They think that he's a better long-term answer, and they think that he can do more for them. And I align with that line of thinking. So that's just my piece about it. I know a lot of you have been commenting, so I'll get to it. I'll get to you here in a minute. Rushing for 1,000 yards is easy to you. Why doesn't every starting back rush for 1,000? Oh, I didn't say it was easy. Did not say it was easy. I'm just saying it's not as impressive as it used to be. That's my piece on it. And plus, guys, it's a passing league, And if there's a game that's going back and forth and you got to constantly, play catch up and score points, you're going to throw the ball. And by the way, that's why teams value guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Like Alvin Kamara, I don't think Alvin Kamara's ever had a season in which he's ran for 1,000 yards, but you look at his total scrimmage yards, he has a ton of receptions and receiving yards. Alvin Kamara's better than Najee Harris. I'm going to pull that up real quick just so I don't look like an ass if Alvin Kamara does have 1,000 yards rushing season, but I'm pretty sure overall, I don't think he's ever had 1,000 yards rushing in a season. Let's look. I'm correct. Yeah, Alvin Kamara's never had 1,000 yards rushing in a season. But that's because the Saints use him a lot as a receiver as well. And Alvin Kamara has been one of the best running backs over the past decade. And when it comes to running backs, the best running backs in the NFL, having one doesn't necessarily equate to winning. Like Jonathan Taylor, he's arguably the best running back in football today. What if the Colts won with him? What if the Raiders won with Josh Jacobs? What if the Browns won with Nick Chubb? What if the Giants won with Saquon Barkley? Now, a lot of that's not their fault because they get drafted into bad situations with bad teams. But, a great running back doesn't necessarily equate to winning. It's not 1993 anymore. So that's why I'm not worried about if Najee Harris does go elsewhere. I would like for him to stay in Pittsburgh. But, again, worst case scenario is that Jaylen Warren becomes the 1. They bring in somebody else to be the 2. And life goes on. But the sky isn't falling. Sky isn't falling. I know a lot of you are still in here. Let me go back to see. I know JW said some stuff about James Conner, just some, yeah. We all know Omar asked you what you think he should do, and you said, if Omar Khan was asking for my opinions, I certainly wouldn't be living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Or maybe I would, I don't know. I value my privacy. Y'all crown Warren as running back 1 and crown Pickens as wide receiver 1. They need to learn those spots. I have been very vocal that George Pickens is not a wide receiver 1. He is very much not an ex-receiver. No one wants to hear that. But I'm very much on the side of George Pickens as a very, very good 2, not a 1. Honestly, outside of guys like McCaffrey and Chubb before his injury, most running backs are interchangeable. I don't know about interchangeable, but you get a big shuffle of guys outside of them. And I said yesterday, it's hard to rank top 10 running backs year in and year out anymore because a lot of them change. Look at the Dolphins. They got guys like Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane that they utilize really well. Look around Kyron Williams. No one had heard of Kyron Williams ahead of last year. He was an all-pro. Running backs just have this weird tendency to come out of nowhere and pop off and then fade away. Miles Sanders had a very good year in 2022 with the Eagles. Signs with the Panthers, no one knows who he is anymore. He had a horrible year last year. And then DeAndre Swift came in after not being much of anything in Detroit, comes to Philadelphia, has a great year, signs with the Bears. Guess what? Probably not going to be as good. So running backs, it's a very dependent position in a lot of ways. I get that, which is why I hear the arguments of, the offensive line and everything. But it's a position that's pretty interchangeable. If you can find a relatively good one, you're in a good spot. Najee Harris is a good running back. But, they also have Jaylen Warren, and they can find somebody to be a complement to Jaylen Warren should they not be able to bring back Najee Harris. Jaylen, 77-yard run. He went untouched. Tell me one game Najee didn't get hit behind the line. Warren's shots are overblown. He hasn't done that as a feature. Maybe, hey, we'll see, man. We'll see. I think that, here's the thing. We can talk about Jaylen Warren going untouched on that play. Najee Harris doesn't make that run, though. I promise you that. Najee Harris isn't running for 77 yards. Jaylen Warren did it twice. Preseason, of course, but he had 2 77-yard runs. And people said after the run in the preseason against Buffalo, I think it was the first quarter. But people looked at that and were like, hey, look, like Najee Harris, but he can't do that. That's just kind of been my argument. So that there's no explosiveness whatsoever to Najee Harris's game. Najee is the same back he was at Bama. I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. Najee can catch, they choose not to throw to him. And maybe that's the case, but he doesn't have any sort of like breakaway speed. Now, again, I hate having these types of conversations because it sounds like I'm trying to rip Najee Harris down. I like Najee Harris. I think more or less I'm just trying to make everyone realize that, like, if he does leave, the sky's not falling. You know? Everything's going to be okay. Kamara is better than Najee. Yes, very much so. They haven't used Najee as an outlet receiver the last 2 years. When they did, he was awesome at it and caught everything. Made plays every time. Again, man. That game against Vegas where he had like 14 catches. It was great for, PPR fantasy players. But, I mean, it was 14 catches for, I think, like 70-some yards. Now, one of them, he broke a tackle and got a few yards down the sideline to score. And again, I think Najee Harris is a good running back. He's not irreplaceable. You can find plenty of Najee Harrises. I think that's what I'm trying to say, is you can find plenty of like Najee Harrises. Okay? You're not finding another Christian McCaffrey. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Is that while he's good, he's not irreplaceable. I think that's the overall argument I'm trying to make in all of this. But and again, if you haven't subscribed already, every Monday through Friday throughout the rest of the offseason, Black and Gold Breakdown, where we talk everything Steelers. Again, we'll do it every Monday through Friday at 7:30. Black and Gold Breakdown, talking everything Steelers, and then as well as my podcast, The Pump Fake, my national NFL podcast, where sometimes it'll just be me, but most of the time I'll have one of my friends around the NFL media sphere join me to talk all about the NFL. Me and my buddy JP Acosta from SB Nation recap the NFL draft, our favorite drafts, our least favorite drafts, favorite picks, least favorite picks, and then we talked a little bit about wrestling at the end. So you can go watch that on the channel right now, or you can listen to it wherever you get your podcast. Again, that's The Pump Fake with Jarrett Bailey. If you want more stuff from me outside of just Steelers talk. This QA format is awesome, but as you continue these, the channel will grow and it will become impossible for you to answer everything. Hey, that's fair. Once that does happen, that's when stuff like super chats will become utilized. So, I mean, if you were to leave a super chat, they light up on the side where my comments are, so they'll stick out to me more. Once the channel, gets bigger and bigger, that's probably what I'm going to have to resort to, because I won't be able to answer all of you. Then we'd just be sitting here all day, me scrolling. It's not really what people come here for. But you come here for the conversation, of course. But when we get there, I'll address it as need be. But for the time being, I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. But, say it does get, the channel gets bigger and comments just keep flowing in. That's when I'll utilize things like super chats and things of that nature to, make your question more of a priority, if that makes sense. But I appreciate you guys for being here, man. Is Ryan Watt's size a good fit for slot cornerback? He's tall as hell. No, I think he's going to play safety. I think that's what they're probably going to do is move him around, have him as a guy who they can put on the outside if need be. I think he's going to, like I said, they're going to have him do some safety stuff. Yeah, he's going to be a special teams demon year one. And if people get hurt, then he'll have to be thrown in on defense. I think, yeah, I followed up. He might just be too big. I think that to be a nickel guy, you got to be a little bit on the smaller side just to be able to move quicker. But his size, yeah, I think that he's very much a guy that you'll put deep at safety. But again, I think that they'll try to have him on the outside as well if people get hurt. You can get in a few more comments. Again, we're going to try to keep these within an hour now that I'm doing it, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. I know a few days ago we went like 2 hours. I'm not going to lean into doing that too much. If we go over a little bit, I'm not angry about it. But we'll keep it within like an hour 15 each of these. I love how no one understands you can still sign an extension with Najee at a better price. People acting like he was told to hit the road. Yeah, they can do that. And I think that that's something that is very likely where they can come to terms on, an extension that's 2 years, maybe 3 with an out clause after year 2, or if it's a 2-year extension, an out clause after year 1, if they don't like the way you performed. So I think that that's a very real possibility. There's also a real possibility that they just tag him. I don't know what his franchise tag price will be. If it ends up being more expensive than the 5th-year option, and that's kind of backwards. But I think that there's a good chance that he's still in Pittsburgh next year. It'll just be on a 2-year extension with a potential out after year 1. I think maximum it's a 3-year extension where they can probably have a clause to get out of it after year 2. So I think that there's a good chance he'll still be around. But again, that also tells me that they prioritize Jaylen Warren. Because if they can keep one of them, he's going to be the one that ends up sticking around. And again, if you have any questions or comments that don't pertain to Najee Harris, you are more than welcome to drop those. We can get to them in the final 10-ish minutes. If you have any sort of just general NFL questions too that you want answered, we can get to those as we look into wrapping this up in the next 10 minutes or so. But I appreciate you all for watching. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. And as I hinted at before, working on getting some players on here. I said that as part of the Pump Fake Plus membership. Part of the perks of it is when I have players on, when I have media on, you guys can submit questions to have asked to players and media. So working on getting some guys on, especially at this time of year where it's a little bit quiet. So working on getting that done. And when it is worked out, I'll let you guys know in advance the dates for it. That way you can, be prepared to be here live for it. So it'll all be worked out soon. In talks with multiple guys. So just keep that in mind. I think Cam should move to nose tackle. He looked huge next to Frazier and Fatanu. Let Benton grow and where he'll ultimately end up. Maybe. Maybe that's an avenue that they pursue. I think a lot of guys, it's May. A lot of guys are going to look a little bit bigger. Cam's also, 35. So I think at this point in his career, he's just going to still playing at a good level. But if this isn't his last year, I would be surprised. Do you think Dan Moore starts over Fautanu? Or is it a vet gets the nod so the rookie earns it? He shouldn't. He definitely shouldn't. I'm tired of this Dan Moore stuff. Really tired of that. I don't know who he has pictures of, like what sort of incriminating things he has on somebody, but we need to stop that. The starting lineup should be either Broderick or Fautanu at left tackle with Samalu, Zach Frazier, James Daniels, and then Broderick Jones or Fautanu at right tackle. It shouldn't be this difficult. And if you want to keep Broderick at right tackle, keep him at right tackle. If you want to keep Fautanu, or if you want to put Fautanu at right tackle and move Jones to left tackle, do that. But Dan Moore's not good. Fautanu can start right away without question. Without question. Dan Moore is not good. And they would be doing themselves a disservice if they try to do this stupid thing. It was like, oh, no, we're not going to rush him. That's not rushing. He's just ready to play. Like, you took the guy in the first round who you didn't think was going to be there. Play him. The stupid, making guys wait when they don't need to wait. Did it last year with Broderick Jones. That was stupid. And then you benched the wrong lineman to put him in. That entire thing, really, that still pisses me off. And I really hope we don't see that repeat this year. Because Dan Moore might be a cool dude and everything. He's not good at football. And I don't want to see him starting over Troy Fautanu. That would be a very numbskull decision. I hope that they don't do it. Agreed on Dan Moore, but he was at least serviceable as a backup when Mason was in. That's fine. You can be a serviceable backup. I don't want him starting. If one of them gets hurt and you need to throw Dan Moore in there, okay. You can certainly do worse in terms of like backup guys. He should not be starting. There's zero excuse to have Dan Moore. Zero excuse for that, man. Running back, that's our biggest problem. I don't think that. I mean, Najee and Jaylen Warren are both really good. I think that's far from their biggest problem. Their biggest problem is a wide receiver opposite of Pickens on the outside and cornerback depth. And we'll see about the quarterbacks. I'll tell you in the middle of the year if the quarterback's still a problem or not. I think the running backs are fine. I was at camp when Dan Moore took right tackle reps. He was god-awful. I'm sure Dan Moore's a cool dude, but he's not a starting caliber NFL offensive lineman. And again, it just really annoyed me how all of that went down last year, where they benched Chuks Okorafor in large part because he called out all the bullshit. He's just like, yeah, none of this is working. And so they bench him as like a disciplinary thing, and Broderick just ends up keeping the job. And now Chuks Okorafor is in New England, where I think he's going to do well. And Dan Moore's still around for whatever reason. So it's just dumb. Just dumb. Defensive line, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, defensive line depth is certainly a thing. And again, they drafted Logan Lee, who I think that they really hope ends up being a guy that is a steal in the 6th round. Incredibly athletic. I think that they hope that he ends up being a guy that is a steal in the 6th round and that can be a serviceable starter at some point. They brought in Dean Lowry from Minnesota. That's a guy who will be a backup interior guy. And then we'll see with Isaiah Loudermilk. That's a guy who I like Isaiah Loudermilk a lot. Really just soft-spoken dude, works hard. I like Isaiah Loudermilk. And I hope to see him take a step forward. So that's a guy I'll be rooting for sure. And who else? DeMarvin Leal. I don't think he's going to be there, guys. I think that they'll cut DeMarvin Leal. I think he gets pushed off the roster. I just meant as a cheap backup that knows the system. Fautanu is ready at either side. Yeah. I think having Dan Moore as a backup is fine. This is also the last year of his contract, so I don't think that he's going to be back after this year. Chuks was played for calling out Kenny, not from play. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was basically calling out the bullshit. They didn't like that, so they benched him. But good for Chuks. I used to be pretty down on Chuks Okorafor. He was a fine right tackle. You could do worse. You could do better. He was fine. I hope that he does well in New England. Now protecting Drake May, who I think is going to be really fun to watch. The Patriots over the past few years were the most boring team in football. Now they got Drake May. They drafted Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. I think that the offense could be pretty fun. At minimum, watching them at camp is going to be fun because they have Drake May and they drafted Joe Milton, who's not going to be a good NFL quarterback, but watching him at practice when he just throws 100 yards would be pretty fun. Keep up the good work. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Seriously need a zero tech nose, protect these inside linebackers. Yeah. That would be something good to have. That I would have liked to see them get T'Vondre Sweat. But he's in Tennessee. A lot of people didn't like that pick. I liked it. I think he'll be all right. He's only a 2-down guy. You ain't playing him 3 downs, but that's okay. I would like to see them just get some big mother to put in there. Chuks wanted Mason to start and Kenny out of the game, so we got punished. Rooney was dead set on. Yeah, I'm very happy that Kenny Pickett is no longer there. Could not be happier. And if you want to have a good laugh, you can search it on my channel. The day that they traded him, I think it's just called Steelers trade Kenny Pickett to Eagles or something like that. But you can search it. If you just search my name and Kenny Pickett traded, you'll have a good laugh. Montrevious a solid nose tackle? I like Monty Adams. I think he's fine. I don't know if he's like a long-term answer at nose. At worst case, he's good depth, but they certainly do need a guy that can be reliable starting there. In terms of, he was a guy like last preseason who stood out a little bit to me. I was like, okay, like game against Tampa Bay, Monty Adams looked all right. But yeah, they use him as depth right now, you know. Can't stop the run or cover tight ends. That's why I want them to bring back Terrell Edmonds, because he was very good at covering tight ends. Landon Roberts is a very good run stopper. Patrick Queen is incredibly fast. Peyton Wilson's incredibly fast. That was another thing with the Steelers. They wanted to get faster defensively because they were slow as hell last year. They got 2 fast linebackers. They got a fast corner. Their goal in mind was we need to get more speed. And I think that with Queen, with Wilson, Landon Roberts, who's already a good run stopper, they'll be better at that. And again, I would like to see them bring back Terrell Edmonds because he was very good at erasing tight ends over the middle. Don't think it's Rooney. Tomlin was the Kenny guy. I strongly disagree. Rooney saw his father pass on Dan Marino, and he wanted to draft the Pitt guy and make right or something. Rooney was the Kenny guy. Rooney was the Kenny guy. Not to say that Tomlin hated him or anything, but Rooney was the Kenny guy. Edmonds and Peyton about to shut down 10. Again, I would love for Terrell Edmonds to come back. He tweeted yesterday something about 2 dogs, 1 bone, which is a very old Mike Tomlinism. So that, we talked about it yesterday. I would like to have him back. Run it back with Golden, Edmonds, and either Peterson. I don't know who Golden is. You talking Robert Golden? I don't think he's been a Steeler since like 17. Oh, Marcus Golden. Now you off the edge. Okay. Marcus Golden would be a good guy to bring back. I think they're really comfortable with having Nick Herbig as like the first guy off the edge to relieve Watt and Highsmith. I don't need to see Patrick Peterson come back. Respectfully to Patrick Peterson, I'm good. Like, he would just be a veteran in the locker room. He doesn't add anything on the field anymore. He's just too slow. Cam Sutton, if they feel comfortable with who he is as a guy and feel like, he's, whatever happened with his legal situation, if they feel like he's, really put an effort to make right for that, then cool. I'm all for people getting second chances, especially if they're genuinely remorseful and show that they understand that they messed up and have shown that they want to be better and make right for their actions. I'm very much a second chances are okay in my book type of guy. So if they feel comfortable with it, absolutely. Again, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what happened with Cam Sutton. We can read the reports and everything, of course, but there's only a select number of people who know what actually happened. If he did that, definitely not defending it whatsoever. But if he is, going the extra mile to really show that he wants to change, wants to get better, wants to make right as best he can, then, I think that people are allowed to have second chances. And, if they feel comfortable enough bringing him back, cool. Edmonds should bulk up 10 to 15 pounds and move to inside linebacker. No, because they already have 3 guys there that are really good now. And when Holcomb comes back, they'll be solid there. I think Edmonds is a good box safety. Like, that's just, more fluidity in terms of his movements to stick with tight ends. More weight would just make him slower and probably help tight ends in that regard. So I think that, specializing in one certain thing as, a role player is a good thing to have. Slot for Peterson. I hear you, man, but I just don't want it personally. Like, I think that Beanie Bishop has a genuine chance of being their starter week 1 at nickel, which I'd be cool with, especially if he's good. But I don't need to see that for Patrick Peterson. Sorry. I just don't need it. Don't need it. Oop. Bishop will win the slot job. Probably. That would be my guess. I don't like Edmonds covering. A lot of people seem to say that. Here's the thing. That's not how they'll utilize him, because they have Minkah Fitzpatrick. They have Deshaun Elliott now as well. They can be more specific with how they utilize Terrell Edmonds should they bring him back this time around. So Just my overall thoughts. Edmonds on receivers, no, but on tight ends he was better than we had at the end of the year. Yeah, like I said before, if I had to choose between Terrell Edmonds or Devontae Casey, I would choose Terrell Edmonds. Just my overall thoughts. All right, I'm going to begin wrapping this up. It's a good show, good conversation. Tomorrow, like I said, today we were originally planning to do the conversation about, Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson, what each guy does, what they can bring to the offense. We'll do that tomorrow. We'll also talk a little bit more about the cornerback room. So I'll have some numbers for you tomorrow. We'll have a little bit of a conversation about the quarterbacks, which will be fun. I was kind of pissed that they didn't pick up the option because I had a nice thumbnail for today that I made. So I guess you'll just have to see that tomorrow. So Justin Fields and Russell Wilson will be the main focal point tomorrow. And then, yeah, we'll have a little bit more of a conversation about the cornerbacks, maybe some free agent guys that are still out there, maybe some trade targets. I don't know. Maybe Omar Khan will surprise us and trade for a dude. Who knows? But yeah, quarterbacks and cornerbacks tomorrow as the main focal points. If you're not already subscribed, again, Black and Gold Breakdown every Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're doing this for the rest of the off season. And like I said, once we get closer to the regular season, we'll generate a plan of some sort. If you want to become a Pump Fake Plus subscriber member on YouTube, all the perks are listed there as to what it gives you. But mainly the two big ones are we'll do, member-only shows once we get enough members. And then, when I have players on, when I have, my friends in the media sphere on, you get to submit your questions to be asked to them on air. So if you want to become a member, absolutely would love it. If not, that's okay too. But please do subscribe to the channel, like the content, appreciate it. And yeah, by the way, seriously, if you want a good laugh, if you want to see how I feel about Kenny Pickett, just go to YouTube or stay on YouTube, I guess, and just search Jarrett Bailey, Kenny Pickett traded. It's just me just being petty for a while. It's a good time. But I will see you guys tomorrow. Quarterbacks, cornerbacks, please like, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your mother, tell your aunts and uncles. I'll see you tomorrow. Black and Gold Breakdown. All things Steelers at 7:30.